governments are under increasing pressure to demonstrate results, manage limited resources wisely, and respond to complex challenges such as poverty, inequality, and climate change. In this context, strong national evaluation capabilities are essential. They enable governments to generate and use credible evidence across the policy cycle, from planning and budgeting to implementation, learning, and accountability. So today's discussion focuses on the important relationship between supreme audit institutions and evaluation systems. SAIs provides independent assurance through financial compliance and performance audits, including audit related to the SDGs. So evaluation systems contribute deeper analysis on relevance, equity, sustainability, and impact. When these functions work together, they strengthen the machinery of government and create a more coherent evidence ecosystem for SDG accountability. This topic is particularly relevant in the Asia-Pacific region, where countries are at different stages of institutionalizing evaluation and integrating SDG-related audits. By sharing experiences across audit institutions, evaluation associations, and international initiatives, this webinar aims to identify practical ways to enhance collaboration and strengthen national evaluation capabilities. So APEA is pleased to convene this dialogue with our partners, including the Mongolian Evaluation Association, the Sri Lanka Evaluation Association, SDGs, and others. This reflects our shared commitment to learning, collaboration, and professionalization of evaluation across the region. I thank our distinguished speakers and the moderator for their contributions, and I encourage all participants to engage actively in the discussion. With that, I wish you a productive and insightful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Professor Yoko. Let us ask the audience, before we even go to our panelists, how familiar are you with the differences between a Supreme Audit Institution and National Evaluation Agency? The options are A, not familiar, B, somewhat familiar, C, fairly familiar, which is more than somewhat, and D, very familiar. Please chat in A, B, C, or D. We want to get a sense of where people are at. Okay, we are beginning with an A. Who else? What else? Okay, another A. What else? Who else? Let's keep the chats coming in. Okay, B. Khadija, yes, we will certainly share the recording, and I suppose in some cases the slides as well. I see a lot of A's and B's, so some level of familiarity, but mostly not too much, and a few coming in that are C, so fairly, and I'm going to say it's still much more leaning toward the A's. Okay, we are getting a sense of where we are. This is very helpful for our panelists as well, so that they can the discussion we have really brings everybody on to the same page, and then we can build from there. With this, I would like to invite one by one our panelists, and I would like to begin with Dennis. So Dennis Jobin is the co-chair of Eval SDGs. He has more than 25 years of experience in evaluation and in performance audit, something that we are talking about today. Dennis has worked at both field and headquarter levels. He's managed one of UNICEF's largest evaluation portfolios in Nigeria. He leads impact evaluation strategy of the National Crime Prevention Center and reviews Canada's evaluation policy for the Office of Auditor General of Canada. And Dennis is a very strong advocate for integrating evaluation into the machinery of government. Dennis, it's lovely to have you here. Welcome. All right. Next, our speaker is Mr. Engpold Delga. He comes to us from the Mongolian National Audit Office, here, where he's the Director of Performance and Compliance Audit. Now, Mr. Delga has been with the MNAO for the last 15 years and has been instrumental in operationalizing INTOSAI in Mongolia. Thank you very, very much, and so nice to have you here. Welcome. Our third speaker and panelist is Mr. Adriano Juras, the Manager of Professional and Relevant SAIs Department, INTOSAI, IDI. So INTOSAI Development Initiative, IDI. Adriano has more than 10 years of experience in performance auditing at the Supreme Audit Institution of Brazil and has led roles in coordinated audits of SDG implementation within all ASEPs and OISCCP LP. I think there is a lot we need to get into here when we talk about SAIs. And his portfolio includes audits of sustainable development goals and facilitating audit impact. Adriano, lovely to have you here. Welcome. And finally, Gonzalo Hernandez Licona, the founder of CON-EVAL. Gonzalo is the director of the Social Observatory CEEY in Mexico. He's an expert on development evaluation, labor markets, and poverty measurement. He launched and directed CON-EVAL for 13 years. That's the Mexican Evaluation Unit. He also was the director of evaluation at the Ministry of Social Development. Gonzalo, it is a delight to have you here as well. I would love to hear all four of you at least say hi, so I know that your microphones are all working. Can I just hear your highs, please?
Thank you very much, and indeed, thank you for you.
You're very welcome. Lovely to have you. Hi. Okay, so the way we're going to do this, that is, we will go through a conversation guided by a very, very broad question. The question will be put up on screen, and our panelists will either speak to it, and in some cases they may have a couple of slides that they might share. And what we would love to see is for you, the listener, the audience, to type in your questions or your comments as we go on. I would like us to begin with the very first question, noticing that this audience is early in its understanding of the different roles. Let's begin here. What are Supreme Audit institutions and how are they different from national evaluation agencies in general, and specifically when we are talking about implementing the Sustainable Development Goals? I would like very much here to invite Adriano to speak first, and then let's take it from there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sharma. If you could, thank you very much. So it's a pleasure to be here with you. Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where from the world you are connecting. My name is Adriano Juras, and I work at the INTOSAI Development Initiative, the IDI. And let me start with the basics. So it's good to see, to have had the temperature of the room. I could see from the responses. I got a quick review of that. We had 17 responses, 10 A's, 4 B's, and 3 C's. I'm sorry, as an auditor, we need to crunch numbers. And so I think, like, coming from 47 participants, we have a good sample of responses, and more than half of them are A, and more than 75% are A or B. So it's good to know that information, that there is maybe a lack of understanding between both communities. And I'm happy to explain something here about Supreme Audit Institutions, the SAIs. Originally, I come from the SAI Brazil. So each country, they have a Supreme Audit Institution. I'm also happy to have Mr. Ekbold here from SAI Mongolia. He's going to be speaking afterwards. So each country has their own SAI. And as you can see in the first line of this slide, a SAI is a public body. So it's inside the public system, and it exercises the highest public sector auditing function of the state. There is a larger definition. I didn't want to bring it all here. If you want to go to this first link, intosai.org, so you have 195 more or less SAIs in the world, and they gather in this international organization of SAIs, the Intosai. And if you click that link, each of you, you can get to the link of the list of members, and then you can find your country, which is the SAI in your country. So it's nice to start interacting with what your side does, which is what's the latest reports, how are they in the media, and briefly speaking, I would like to have some other interventions during the panel, but for now I would bring that first information that the SAI is an essential part of the public financial management and accountability ecosystem in the country. So we are responsible for the independent and external oversight as per the mandate, which is recognized in the Constitution and the legislation. So this is an institution that is government recognized in a sense. It is not part of the government, but is part of the public administration in the sense. So it does not execute public policies, but it does this oversight, which needs to be independent and external. The main functions of an SAI include financial audits, compliance audits, and performance audits. I'm not going to go into the details here, but basically the financial audits would like to ensure that they aim to ensure that the financial statements actually state a true and fair view of the actual finance of the public entity or the program. Compliance audits are focusing on the compliance of the public administration to laws, regulations, contracts. So then you can find that the audit findings are pretty much about compliance in this case. And the performance audits, that's where we have a lot of interlinks with the national evaluation system, which in the performance audits, the auditor evaluates economy, efficiency, and effectiveness, the 3 E's. And these 3 types of audits are according to our standards. As you can see, the international standards of supreme audit institutions, the SAI, there's also a link there. You can explore that. I can go through some of them if we want. And then the 2 last topics of this slide is something that Ms. Yoko Ishida also mentioned, the impact and some areas such as poverty, inequality, climate change. So we are very focused on audit impact. So what is the value added by the SAI and what is being delivered by the government? So how can we actually contribute to impact for better financial systems, for more public trust, effectiveness, national outcomes? That's where SDGs come into play. Improvement and learning of the public administration. There is a link there as well. I'm just putting a lot of links because the presentation is going to be shared, but I just wanted to highlight some things here before some other discussions on the questions come. And the SDG audits, so auditing SDG implementation relates to performance audits that will focus on national outcomes, and particularly on these 3 main topics or issues, if you can say, policy coherence, leaving no one behind, multi-stakeholder engagement. These are 3 very relevant principles of the 2030 agenda, and they are very linked to what NSAI does when it does a performance audit, which is about effectiveness of public policies, of programs, of public entities in delivering and achieving the SDGs. I'm sorry, it was, I'm putting some time here. I'm almost in 6 minutes. I was trying to put in the time that we had arranged for 5, but I'm free for questions, and I'd like to also, in the discussion, if I can bring some intervention, I would be very happy to do so. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Adriano. Thank you. Much appreciate the links you brought because they'll be very helpful for all of us after this. I want to bring in Dennis into this conversation. Dennis, could you talk a little bit more and give us more detail on how the whole system fits together?
Thank you, Anidata. Thank you, Adriano and colleague. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear esteemed panelists and participants. Where does this fit? I'll leave the slide here, but essentially, to answer the question, it's not really evaluation or performance audit, but how they fit together, indeed, as the question rightly put it, and more particularly performance audit, which is a type of evaluation according to certain author. For me, the interest here is, as I've delved into both performance audit and longer career and evaluation, is there's a lot to learn from the auditing realm and more particularly the performance audit. They have a longer history than us evaluators, in examining performance of organization. It goes back to the Roman Empire and even the Egyptian, okay, where there's some trace of that content. More recently, before even evaluation exists, auditor were looking at the performance of organization with a very simple, powerful measure is balance sheet. So of course this evolves over time, and it's really to examine now in the machinery of government where they have the executive, the legislative, the in between the SAI, the auditor, and then within line ministry and the central government, how we learn the learning function, the oversight function, and the budgeting, the planning function, all these they come together with solid learning and evaluation and auditing and performance audit, the specific role of SAI. So next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. An image worth 1,000 words, we said in French. So again, here, essentially, if I take a theoretical framework approach, the principal agent theory or the agency theory, how does accountability come? Why is there an accountability relationship? Accountability is created in only one situation, when the ownership of the asset is separated from the control of the asset. What happened in the Canadian case, but in American Congress, in Europe, in Mexico, I'm less familiar, but it's the same, is the taxpayer elected representative that goes to the parliament, and the parliament sanctioned the budget, the national budget, and how are we going to implement the government priorities, the agent. So the parliament is the principal, the agent is the government, and he has the control over spending. But he needs to report back to parliament whether what he has done with the monies, the public monies that he has received. So there's a bunch of systems, national evaluation system, performance audit, regulatory audit, financial audit. There's that the SAI will do, but then the government as well will evaluate himself from an independence point of view. We try to be independent, but we never really achieve this independence as SAI does. To report back to the parliament essentially for an accountability function and say, this is what we have achieved, this is the result we achieved, this is the impact we had, this is how relevant this policy are for Canadians, and so forth, so on. And we all have this happening into the machinery of government, and is unique to each country. But some elements can be we can drive some comparison and synergy. So this is how the system, the complexity of the system is working and is interdependent. And I'm moving for the next slide because of time. Next slide. So how can we work? There's so many learning, and how in the methodology realm, in the detail of the thing of the performance of that. But if you go in the system level, the machinery of government, and I'm using a demand and supply side approach here. Auditor, and we've seen that a long time. I've not seen that, but in the time I was working for the SAI in Canada in the 2000, we were auditing, and I was part of that team. We were auditing Canada evaluation policy. How well Canada is implementing all its policy, but my team was was examining the evaluation policy and the result for Canadian at that time. It's embedded into the RBM in Canada. So we were auditing whether the evaluation was used for decision making as planned. They were the coverage was done. So from a demand side, whether it was requested, demanded, and informing Treasury Board budget allocation, financial allocation, national budgeting, used by the Public Account Committee and parliamentarian. And from the supply side, we look at whether the evaluation was of quality. Why are they not used? Maybe they are not of quality, maybe they are not well done. They look only at the activity side instead of at the outcome. So the push for the impact over the last 25 years is because there's a history of looking at the output only, on the activity only. So we move and we enhance the quality responding to this system change. It takes time, but that's a bit where we stand. So the Supreme Audit Institution can look and can support national evaluation capabilities by looking and critically, constructively addressing the gap in how countries implement their national evaluation capacity and capabilities in achieving their national plan, including SDGs. So this is why it's very important in one area that they can work together, and SAI can support national evaluation capabilities by looking regularly each 5 years, 10 years. They have their own way of setting their plan, but looking more often to how well the government is establishing its own system, and national budgeting is informed by evidence. We see now in the newspaper each day that when the government is not using evidence, it creates a lot of drama and so uncertainty in the market. Next slide. Thank you. So how they can be a better alignment. So here another example. I mean, they can inform the evaluation can inform the audit scoping and vice versa. Audit finding can shape evaluation questions. So when we do an audit, when we do an evaluation with scope, it's important that we look, is there any relevant performance audit or any other audit, but of that entity, of that program that we can inform. So it's important. I don't think this is done systematically, but sometimes they are very rich audit finding that are very relevant for our scoping. So we don't start from scratch. Understand the ADI as a data bank of all the audit per country related per SDG, I believe so. I think I've seen that in their website. So it's something that is there. The information is there. We just need to grab it and to connect it when we do scoping, so we have better and more strategic evaluation that are useful in advancing both accountability and learning. So it's important to connect both and to avoid mixing out and to avoid working in silos. So I will stop there because I think I've reached my 7 minutes, but I'm happy to answer some of the questions, and please do agree or disagree if yeah. Over.
Yeah, Dennis, thank you for the wonderful overview. I do have a question for both, either one of you could answer. Could you clarify who exactly decided? It's like, how do you decide what to audit? So how does a Supreme Audit Institution decide who brings them in, and how do they decide what they're going to audit? Just very quickly, so that we have a better understanding of that.
That's a very, very good question. So as per the standards, one of the things about the independence of the SAI is being able to choose the topic of the audit. And how do they do that? Also, the standards bring 3 main criteria, which is risk, materiality, and relevance. So you combine these 3. So materiality, you would maybe pick programs or other topics that will have a high relevance in the budget. Risk, of course, you might have a risk verification diagram to check which activities or projects are in more risk, even if they don't have a very high materiality. And the relevance, you can have social programs or other, also if you have the the environmental programs, sometimes they are very low in budget. So in materiality, they would not get that priority, but then relevance and risk, maybe you can put them higher in the priority. So as any other institution, SAIs have limited resources, limited capacity. So you need to really pick the most relevant topics to audit. But that's a very good question. And one of the things I can talk about in the end is when you plan the audit and the annual audits you're gonna conduct. We have been discussing with SAIs about planning for audit impact. So bringing the audit impact value chain into the planning process to pick the topics and the information that would be relevant for the SAI to work on. So that would be my first contribution on that. But I mean,
Wonderful.
we could be speaking hours about that particular thing. But thank you.
Okay. Adriano, thank you for clarifying that. I'm going to just say that Ajit Wadin has a wonderful question in the chat about interventions and conflicts of interest. Let's get to that when we get to our last question on the last topic of the panel, because I think that is relevant. There is another question, which is, do audits conduct before, during, and only post-program implementation? Can one of you please very quickly respond to this question? Do audits conduct before, during, and only post-program implementation? Very quick answer would be.
Yeah, very, very quick. Usually we think of post or during implementation, before, but it depends a lot on the SAI setup. Sometimes something that I didn't have time to mention in my intervention was that the SAIs, they can have, Dennis mentioned the Canadian SAI, which has a particular setup in the public administration, but SAIs, you have more than 190 SAIs, so they have different setups. Some are jurisdictional, some are courts, some are Westminster, some are linked to the parliament, the others to the judiciary power, the others to the executive. So it changes a lot how they do their work, but basically the standards, the international standards, try to standardize that function. But mostly I would say during and post implementation, that would be when the audits take place.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I want to talk about your lived experiences so that we are not in the realm of theory and people like me are able to understand exactly what we are talking about here. So could you kindly share an example from your lived experience of an implementation that you've seen or been involved in? And I'm thinking more about evaluation, but however, Gonzalo, could you please talk to us about your experiences of such a project and perhaps share some insights with us?
Thank you very much, Anindita, and I'm really glad to be here. As Dennis said before, we evaluators, we want to connect with other people dealing with similar things and not talking only among ourselves. And I think before going to the example, Anindita, I just want to remind all of us that the government is using citizens' money for their work. And therefore, in democracies, what we need is institutions to tell the citizens, the government is doing this with your money, how they are spending, if they are successful in that. So in every democracy, at least, we need these institutions, and both evaluation units and the Supreme Audit institutions are there for that, just to tell the people, the government is doing this and that with the money, with this success or not, right? Ideally, as Dennis said, we would like to have both working together. Sometimes it's not a case. So let me give you an example. If you go to the next one, at the very beginning, next slide, at the very beginning of SDGs, the Mexican government set up a crusade against hunger as part of the SDG agenda. And therefore, luckily, they used the information from the evaluation unit, which was called Coneval. They used that information to select municipalities and to select public policy tools. And these tools were about income transfers, community kitchens, in-kind food delivery or something. So they used the information from the evaluation process. And luckily, through the evaluation, the government was able to modify certain processes according to the evaluation suggestions. So that was a very interesting example where actually the government was paying attention to the evaluation. At the same time, there was an auditing process for the strategy, for the same strategy. In fact, we had some exchanges between the evaluation and the auditing, but it was not always the case. Unfortunately, this strategy, they want to have to achieve results very, very quickly in a short time, because there were midterm elections, so they want to speed up the results. And therefore, for various administrative processes, they did not follow the rules strictly. And what happened is that the audit notices this, and they presented various challenges, including 2 people in jail. And of course, from the evaluation point of view, we don't send people to jail because it's another function. But what happens if you go to the next one, if we go to the next slide, I'm talking here from the Latin American point of view, specifically the Mexican point of view. And what is interesting and challenging is that in Latin America, Mexico, the history of not following rules is there. So that we have impunity. And this implies creating more controls and rules all the time, because if people don't comply with some, you tend to have more controls. And therefore, there's a permanent mistrust. And this implies more transaction costs for almost everything. And of course, we need auditing for the accountability process. But sometimes one clash between evaluation and audit is that one is actually looking for compliance norms. And sometimes evaluations say, hey, there are too many norms. So we have so many norms that we should actually take off some of them. Therefore, so that happens in another example. It was a very important program, the First Job program for Mexico. And then the problem with that program, according to evaluation, is that they wanted to do so much with so many rules and controls that at the end of the day, the efficiency and effectiveness was not there. So what we need to have, and that's why this panel is so important, is how can we agree more between evaluation and audits in order for countries to have better results? That's a big challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Gonzalo. I'm going to raise a question that's just come up in chat, which is from Ruta, asking that they used to see systems analysis and audit, financial audit, back in the 70s, and then M&E came into being. And why did M&E come in? What was not happening? How would you respond to that?
I believe that one very important tool by evaluators, and indeed, is some tools that were new, like 30 years ago. This tool sometimes called impact evaluation. You say, well, I can show you if your program is working, and I can show you the causality of your program. So I can take into account only what is happening with your program. So this technique of impact evaluation was very, very, still on. But the novelty, unlike the auditors, is what they were able to actually say if the program has an impact or not, without taking into account the other issues. So that element was a novelty, and I think that made a huge impulse on M&E. Of course, we evaluators don't use only impact evaluations for our work, but I think that tool was very, very useful, has been very useful for the evaluation process.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gonzalo. Thank you very much. I want to extend the exact same question and maybe look into this with more of an auditing perspective. And here I would like to invite Engpol, please, to share his experience. And the way we will do this section is Engpol will speak through his lived experience, which is a case that he will be sharing, and then we will also have transcription on at the same time. So welcome, Engbold. I'm going to hand the stage over to you now.
Hello, everyone. I'm gonna talk about how to link monitoring and evaluation, performance audit, especially SDG audit, based on my limited experience conducting a performance audit. Every country's government develops and implements specialized sectoral programs and short-term plans to achieve its medium and long-term goals. Naturally, to assess whether these programs are delivering results, clear indicators and metrics must be established along with monitoring and evaluation structures and vary in design. For Supreme Audit Institution, auditing government programs and projects begins with examining how these initiatives align with the country's top priorities, how they are ranked, and whether appreciate organizational structures and systems have been established. Financial audits also evaluated whether the necessary funds and sources for these programs have been properly identified and utilized. From performance audit perspective, it's important to determine whether planning was done correctly, whether implementation followed the plan, and whether reporting was accurate and reliable. Identifying at which stage errors or shortcomings occurred. And in recent years, as countries have aligned their national goals with the Sustainable Development Goals and implemented related programs, SAIs have begun conducting audits of governments' implementation of national goals in accordance with law and reporting the results to Parliament. In Mongolia case, the law and development policy and planning and its governance stipulates that ministry is responsible for implementing SDGs are included in government structure and species and time frame for state audit institution to conduct audits. Therefore, since SAIs are legally required to conduct audits at regular intervals, they have developed specific methodologies for auditing policy implementation in addition to the core principles of performance auditing. This in turn pressures the government to report in compliance with the audit criteria, as programs are subject to regular audits. Each year, ministries are responsible for short-term implementation of national development policy goals must report to the government and undergo monitoring and evaluation. Each ministry has internal monitoring and audit departments. The government's monitoring and evaluation department prepares and consolidated assessment, which the SAI then conducts performance audit and presents to results to Parliament. Government monitoring and evaluation are conducted in accordance with the special procedure approved by the government resolution. Issue identified by SAI through performance audit that require attention in government monitoring and evaluation. First one is human resources involved in government monitoring and evaluation are unstable and there are few specialized officials in this field. Second one is the procedures, methodologies, and indicators used for monitoring and evolution are overly general and don't clearly define baseline and target levels. Official figures and information are often inconsistent, such as among ministries, national statistical office, and cabinet secretariat. Next one is when planning projects and programs implemented, organizations are not coordinated effectively. And when breaking down programs into activities, they are divided into too many small tasks, such as establishing working groups and submitting reports, etc. Next one, outcomes are not evaluated. Attention is focused only determining the percentage of completion of small projects and activities. And evaluation conducted by ministerial level monitoring units and consolidated government evaluations are not aligned. Regular training for staff involved in monitoring and evaluation is not provided. Based on the intersite development initiatives, ISM SDG audit model, the SAI conducts implementation and development programs audits based on the six principles. First one is has the implementation of programs results in tangible progress. Next one is has vertical and horizontal coherence been ensured? Is there unified policy coordination? Has a system and structure been established to ensure top-down, bottom-up, and interdependent linkages? Is the approach's results-based? Is it aligned with the standards? And does the policy or program adhere to the principle of leaving no one behind? And has multi-stakeholder collaboration been ensured? Suggestion for improving evolution from my side. First one is discuss the results of internal evaluation of government agencies and the audit results of the state audit institution in consolidated manner in the standing committee of the parliament and give the government a deadline for implementation. Second one is provide stable employment of monitoring evolution and internal audit staff of government agencies and provide the regular training. Next one is pay more attention to evaluating whether the results and effects have been achieved and don't plan too many trivial tasks. Next one is evaluated cooperation and participation of organization and assess whether there are omitted or duplicated functions. Last one is it's important to identify the root cause of insufficient implementation. For example, is their structure and organization not working? Is the organization not working? Is there a problem with whom the resource? Can't you define the indicators? And monitoring evolution, internal audit and external audit activities should complement each other, coordinate their activities, and ensure that the methodological principles are clear and not too different. That's all. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. This is very enlightening, particularly the specificity with which you've described the findings and your recommendations. And you have ended here with this idea of organizations aligning better, these two different organization types aligning better, and not just for information flow, but also methodology and approach. So what I want to do is move to the next section, which is really the question about what does it really mean for us as practitioners in the field? How do we work with each other? Why do we work with each other? And I want to ask this question of our panelists personally. In your experience, when have you wanted as an auditor to work with an evaluator or vice versa, and why? And I would like it very much if we very quickly go through the room, and whoever wants to speak is very, very welcome to. Why did you want to work or interact or collaborate with an evaluator or vice versa? What triggered that? Who'll speak first? Maybe Adriano, you could go first, then Gonzalo, then Dennis, and then Engpo, maybe.
Sure. I was just waiting not to be, the first one. But anyway, I mean, from my personal professional experience, both now at IDI, as I've been working with initiatives, also including SAI Mongolia, for example, and other SAIs around the world, we see how important it is the stakeholder engagement by SAIs, how SAIs are part of a larger ecosystem, especially when it comes to SDGs. It's not just a relationship between the SAI and the entity, the audited entity, or the SAI and the parliament, but also you have many other actors involved. You have the academia, you have the evaluation community, you have the private sector, you have the NGOs, international organizations, and many of them, they can bring very valuable inputs for the SAIs. So in my professional experience, when I was conducting audits in Brazil, we would do these panels to discuss either the planning matrix of the audit, when we put together the audit objective, the audit question, and the methodology. And then we'd have from these experts the inputs to make sure that we are going the right direction. Or also in the findings matrix, when we have this internal panel with the external experts to validate and to see if the findings make sense, if in their experience they've also seen something like that. So there are many entry points for the evaluation systems to go in the SAI work. And I think that it was very valuable when we also got together with the practitioners doing an audit, a particular audit in a specific topic, because especially when you get external stakeholders to understand the role of the SAI and the value that we add, they become allies in that in the accountability system. So that's the main, the key concept for me is stakeholder engagement and stakeholder coalitions, where we can raise each other's profile in order to improve the public administration and the accountability system.
Thank you, Adriano. Gonzalo, could you talk to your experience?
Yeah, in my case, let me tell you that I will start with the good things of the exchanges. So I'm an evaluator, and I've been the director of the evaluation unit in Mexico. I was there for a long time, and so one thing I admired of the people on the Supreme Auditing Institution in Mexico, especially those who were doing performance auditing, was the kind of very rigorous questions they ask, and they will keep constantly asking public servants, why did you do that? Why did you choose that? So because sometimes when we set up programs, and especially when there are programs that you are asked to have quickly, a very new program because the president wants that, sometimes you are not paying attention of very obvious details of why we are delivering that? Why? Where do we get the information? Where do we get the experience of doing that? And therefore, these guys from the performance auditing, they were very strict on that in asking these very key questions for the program. So we want to learn about that element. The other thing that it was a challenge, and indeed that is the following: is I give you an example. On the evaluation process, after we finish the evaluation, we tell the program to produce an improvement plan. No, say how are you going to improve your program due to the evaluation process, right? And at the beginning, these programs were really ambitious, so they want to really change the program. But then the people from the auditing came and say, "Hey, I'm going to follow those results, and if they fail to improve, we're going to take that information and then we're going to use it for the auditing." So when that happened, then the people, instead of having very ambitious improvement plans, they only have very bureaucratic plans because they don't want to be punished by the auditor. So we do have this challenge in how can we both evaluation and auditing work together, getting the best out of us without clashing between each other.
Thank you, Gonzalo. I think for this, Dennis, maybe you could help us close out this before we move to the next topic.
Thank you, Data. Just to delve into the last part maybe of this question, and having worked in both around the performance, the supreme audit institution, and a longer part of my career in the evaluation, but as well the national building of national capacity and capabilities. There are a lot that we can learn from auditing and supreme audit institution, and I can talk about hours about it. But I just want to reflect on few different, so for community here of evaluator reflect as well and think what to learn. For example, auditor and SAI, they don't go into the relevance question of questioning the policy choice. And that's a big difference between auditor and evaluator. Evaluator, we value. There's a value proposition, but the challenge here is whose value. My value against some government, populist government, won't work. Auditor, in a very practical, smart way, they decide not to go into that area to protect their profession. So this is why they have a longer and stronger profession than us. They are certified, they have a CA, CPA, and so on. They are protected, and they can't practice if they lose that. So this is something very few people agree with me on that one in the evaluation realm, but I keep pushing this one because even if it's important from an intellectual point of view, it's not smart from a professionalization point of view, as if we want to advance professionalization. Another point is we have in UNEG, in United Nations, but in Canada, APEA, probably Mexico too, we have a standard, we have evaluation standard, and we're very proud of those. And if you look at those, in my view, they are terrible often. Auditor, they have standard for financial audit. They have standard for compliance audit. They have standard for regulatory audit. They have standard for environmental assessment, and so forth. So us is one size fits all, while auditor, they have very sharper their menu. If you're in a restaurant, you can order pizza, spaghetti, and pasta. In an evaluator restaurant, you can only order evaluation. So it's important to reflect on the standard for which product, you know. So evaluation with a S and PAC evaluation are not the same standard with result-based accountability and learning, formative evaluation, and so on. The other, I will stop soon, is the planning, the risk-based planning versus the utility. There's a conflict there, and I think it's not appropriate to use risk-based planning, except in some very rare case of where evaluation is for accountability. It makes sense, but planning and impact evaluation, and you use a risk-based approach is irrelevant, totally. because we'll need to look at which evidence is not produced, evidence gap mapping, and who do we want to advocate for policymaking and so forth, so on. So these are the very small nuance but important ones, and we should learn from each other while minding that we are very different over.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. I notice, Adriano, your hand is up.
Yeah, I'd just like to a brief comment about what Dennis just mentioned, which is a very interesting and a very big discussion in the SAI community, the aspect of auditing the policy or even concluding or recommending a change in the policy. And that's a very important thing. And there's a lot of discussion in the SAI community about this. Some SAIs, including SAI Brazil, they are trying to see more criteria to get there, but it's not such a matter of choice, but it's much more a matter of mandate, in a sense of that the parliament they give you budget and they write the laws, and including the mandate of the SAI. So when the SAI does an audit, the main idea is to give recommendations to improvement, but also to give the parliament the oversight role for regarding the government's execution of the budget. So it's not pretty much the SAI role to discuss whether this policy is good or bad, if it should be changed. It's much more about the implementation of the policy that is set. This discussion, which pretty much more political, and we assume that it was taken in the parliament. And I think that the evaluators and the practitioners, when they can go there, I think it's very useful when you can actually bring some more inputs in that political discussion that the SAI is not mandated to have, actually. Of course, some findings they might get there in a sense, but you never see an SAI recommending to revocate a policy or to change a law. I mean, that's pretty much a very risky place to go, and the mandate is not there. Just wanted to add this thought. Thank you.
Adriano, thank you. And I think what this tells me is that there is plenty more we need to discuss, and there will be a Q&A section coming up shortly. At this point, I would like to invite Dr. Soma De Silva, who is our discussant. Let me introduce Dr. De Silva. Dr. Soma De Silva is a former advisor on monitoring and evaluation for UNICEF South Asia. She pioneered the establishment of the Sri Lanka Evaluation Association and served 2 terms as its president, and later the president of the International Organization for Cooperation and Evaluation, or IOCE. Dr. De Silva has been instrumental in advancing evaluation education in South Asia, contributing to the institutionalization of evaluation training. She's the author of Theory of Change for Development Success and has a PhD from the University of Kelaniya and postgraduate training in demography, statistics, psychology, and sociology. Welcome, Dr. De Silva, and I'm going to hand over the stage to you.
Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you very much. I'm very glad and I feel honored to be part of this discussion. It's very much an emerging and potentially very influential and futuristic. And as you yourself mentioned at the beginning, it's a unique discourse that is happening here. My sincere thanks to the panelists for their thoughtful and practice-informed contributions. The panel highlighted several strategic issues that are central to the current debate on how audit and evaluation can play complementary roles in supporting the achievement of sustainable development goals. I would like to highlight 3 key messages emanating from the discussion and then conclude with a forward-looking concern. First, the mandates. Adriano highlighted that audit and evaluation serve distinct but potentially complementary mandates. He reminded that supreme audit institutions are mandated constitutionally and legislatively to exercise independent external oversight through financial compliance and performance audits. Evaluation focuses on accountability for results for people by generating evidence or rather evaluative knowledge on issues like relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, coherence, sustainability, and impact, which are the criteria that any development intervention should have if it is to achieve success. Development interventions should not only produce good outcomes, they should also follow good processes. The performance audit systems that contribute to good processes and evaluation systems that function to achieve good outcomes can accelerate the SDG achievements, as one of the panelists mentioned. However, the experience from Mexico that Gonzalo shared highlights the issues that demand careful attention. In this case, the evaluation supported the achievement of results. However, political exigencies and the administrative culture identified by the audit caused serious breach of rules and regulations, necessitating even punitive measures. Second, let me go to the use of these functions. A critical distinction lies in how findings are used from the two processes. Audit recommendations typically carry formal, legally binding follow-up requirements. Evaluation use, by contrast, remains uneven and often discretionary. Despite recent advances such as mandatory management responses and improvement plans. As Dennis illustrated, performance audits by SAIs can complement the utilization potential of evaluations. This possibility can stem from the audit's examination of the use and uptake, quality and credibility, and implementation of policies, frameworks, and systems, as was very eloquently highlighted by one of the panelists. The third issue I would like to raise is about professionalism and capacity, where I see is a huge, persisting, troublesome issue. Audit benefits from long-standing professionalism, or rather professionalization, with clear standards, qualifications, and career pathways. Evaluation is still evolving to achieve institutionalization, standards for training, and strong professional structures in the absence of legislative and administrative mandates. The experience shared from Mongolia by Cole represents a promising and pioneering effort in this direction. It underscores the need for potentially astute reforms, rather politically astute reforms, balancing institutional mandates and respecting the professional integrity of both disciplines. The issues identified for improvement in evaluation that he proposed amply illustrate that they relate more to deficiencies in the professionalization and institutionalization of the field of evaluation. These need to be achieved urgently if audit and evaluation are to synergistically support development on a level playing field. In closing, as evaluation continues to emerge from perceptions of being a control function, closer alignment with audit must be approached carefully, is my personal view. The central challenge is to ensure that audit and evaluation reinforce one another, complement one another, while safeguarding evaluation's core role as a tool for learning, adaptation, and improved outcomes for people. The task ahead for us is not to blur the boundaries between audit and evaluation, but to align them in ways that protect integrity, strengthen learning, and ultimately improve the outcomes for our people, whether in terms of sustainable development goals or other more priority issues that may come up in the next half a decade or so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. De Silva. Thank you very, very much. And I would like us to go into the Q&A section. We will have, I'll just do a time check. We will have about 15 minutes for Q&A, and we have received a number of questions already in chat that I'm going to bring up. So some of the questions, quite a few of them relate to the respective roles of audit and evaluation. And there is questions around the conflict of interest. I know, Gonzalo, you have specifically brought it up, and I think some of the other panelists have as well brought it up. The question here is, how do you manage the interventions of experts on the audit and evaluation side? In particular, conflict of interest. What have you done to handle conflict of interest in your work?
Well, this is we could talk long about it, but I think, of course, ideally, the independence is in the middle of the process, both for the evaluation and the audit. We need to have independence, because at the end of the day, we want to tell the citizens we are fair in terms of what we see, we are fair in terms of what we suggest, and it doesn't mean that it has to do with someone telling me what to do. Of course, today, this is a challenge, right? When you have strong presidencies, such as the USA, for instance, or Mexico, where the president is willing to tell you what to do and who to investigate, you need to be independent and you need to be strong on that. So we in Coneval, we keep defending that process, right? We keep defending the independence and of what we do. And sometimes high-level people used to say, "Hey," because we also measure poverty as well as evaluation. They used to tell us, "Hey, why don't you change a bit the way we measure poverty?" So we have a better view of what Mexico is about, and we say, well, we cannot do that, right? We cannot change the poverty measurement because you like it, Mr. President. We need to be very objective, and so we need to be be strong on that. But of course, in these times, those elements are not that easy. But I believe that independence in both auditing and evaluation are so important in all cases, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Gonzalo. I'd love to take another comment on managing conflict of interest and what you've done. But as you're thinking about it, there is another related but not exactly the same question that's come up. What should be done when audit and evaluation findings are contradictory? Have you seen this happen? Why? And then what is the right path? Could anyone speak to this?
Can I go again?
Yes, of course.
So I was telling you this example where from the evaluation point of view, we thought that new program, which was a key program for that president, was not working because it has too many controls and norms, right? There were too many things going on in terms of compliance, and therefore the effectiveness was not there. At the same time, the auditors were saying the program is not complying with the norms. So we had a problem there. And I mean, on that example, the program ended up finishing because it was not going anywhere. But we try to have some understanding between both worlds, the world of evaluation and the world of audit. We tried to have some understandings. We had some understandings, but we didn't go very far on that example.
Got it. Wow.
Maybe-
Thank you,
maybe I
Adriano.
can
Sorry,
comment.
Adriano, sorry, it's you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. In that case, I mean, for the first question regarding conflict of interest, in the case of the SAIs, we have a lot of discussion about independence. So there are many mechanisms to ensure the independence of an SAI. There are some standards, the Mexico Declaration, the Lima Declaration. I can also bring there. There are some things that are in place to ensure an SAI and the auditors' independence. So that's something about the conflict of interest, so that it's not there when you do an audit. And the second thing about this apparent contradiction between conclusions or findings of the different of evaluation and an audit, I would say apparent because many times when you look into the detail, they might have different approaches or different methodologies. So depending on when you actually translate each of them to the same language, then you can understand that they are looking at different perspectives of the same thing. When they are actually contradictory, and I've seen it actually not from the audit perspective, but two agencies, one of the health and the other one of the agriculture and food. They had reports and they would evaluate in Brazil the amount of agrochemicals and fertilizers in food, and for the same period, for the same food items, they had different levels. And then when we are auditing, we were questioning them what was the real thing. And then they said that there were different methodologies, different approaches, and actually the way you communicate results are different. So when we went deeper into that, it's much more about the inputs. I mean, at some point in the end, to extreme point, you can conclude that one evaluation or the one methodology or the other was not good, or it was conducted wrongly. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. But in many cases, when you see the inputs, the information that is there to lead to those conclusions, when you see that they're different or the sampling, I mean, sometimes you get different perspectives of the same thing. That's what I wanted to highlight.
Great. Thank you both. The question that I want to go to is really more forward-looking. And this question is asking, how can the functions be better combined and how can the findings be jointly used? Could you speak from your experience to how we can make this useful for all parties? And this is open to everybody, please.
Maybe I can come in.
Yes, of course.
Sorry, rapidly. How can they be combined? I don't think they should be combined. Let me reframe it differently. Do we need an independent evaluator general? Okay, what are we going to do with performance audit done by the SIA then? So what is the evaluation model? And I don't think they should be combined. I think they should, each context is specific, they should work together. In some contexts, evaluation is more embedded into line ministry, like I said at the beginning, and it's part of RBM. And this issue of independence, I think it's important. I can see that we need it, but in a sense, it's also it comes with a cost, and it's not. It comes with problem with it, independence. Let me put it differently. An experience I had in 2001, 2002. We were meeting. I was working with Canada Auditor General Office, and we're meeting Member of Parliament. Okay, our number one client. And it was a she that she said to us when I go into the public account committee, I mean, I always ask Auditor General report on that health area or environment or industry, whatever the topic is, because I say I find that very, very credible, and I trust it in term. And then I do look at some ministerial evaluation, glance through it, but I'm not too sure about it. And so let me just point out a very different practice in how we do evaluation and how we do performance audit, how we write report. Okay, I stop writing report and evaluation when I start writing report and performance audit differently. We don't use in performance audit all, always, every, most, never, because we can substantiate that. Each sentence in a performance audit report is substantiated with evidence. Each sentence. So if it's most, we're going to say 5 out of 8. We're not going to say most. What do we mean? So it's very, very different. So this is why the credibility of writing. So we stop writing always. It's never work. No. It's more nuanced, and it's very painful to write an audit report because each sentence has to have a proper substantiation. We don't do that in evaluation. It's going to be too costly. But if sometimes I read evaluation report, always this, never do that, and we come making judgment all over the place, and that's why our parliament don't rely too much on evaluator. I'm an evaluator, so I'm criticizing myself, but I don't write report the same way ever since. Thank you.
Okay, great. So that I think leads us to almost toward the end of our questions here. The last question I want to ask to each panelist, but I'm going to switch it a little bit based on your background. I would like to begin first. I think Dennis, you already spoke to this, but I want to get a little specific about it. So my first question will be to Dennis and Gonzalo, and the question is very specifically one thing you, with your evaluator hat on, would learn from the auditors. So if Dennis, you go first, and then Gonzalo.
I think thank you for a good question. I think I just mentioned how to write a report, how to substantiate, how to be zoom focused. Another thing is maybe auditing, okay, beyond the realm of SAI. They have 100, if not 1,000 of criteria. Us evaluator, we have the OECD, and we're stuck with it, and we can't seem to be able to think beyond that. An auditor could not care less about the OECD criteria. They will look at the program area, and they will look at the criteria within that normative document, and they will come up with their own criteria based to make a value judgment based on their observation and to break their observation against those criteria. And then they will reach to conclusion, right? And finding an observation and conclusion. Us, we're stuck with those 5, 6 evaluator, coherence, effectiveness, but there's so many hundreds more criteria. So one thing I would like to reflect to the evaluator is they do learn to develop criteria that make sense for your topic at hand. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dennis. Gonzalo.
No, I'm going to underline what Dennis said before, that one of the learnings I got from the auditors was the rigorous way in they were writing and say, well, every sentence I produce here is based on some evidence, and so it is right. We don't say most of it is 4 out of 5. So we have to be very rigorous. So we should be credible on that. So we've been learning on that process from our friends on the auditing system. The other thing is just because we are finishing is what happens in Mexico. Nevertheless, is that some people still are fearing of evaluation because they feel we are auditors and we're going to penalize them in many ways. So people still sometimes in Mexico don't realize that evaluation is to improve and learn and improve what they do in terms of programs, in terms of public policy, not because of of a penalty, but it's because it will be better off for people if their programs are working better. So an evaluation is always important, not because you're going to be penalized if you don't do it right. It's because you'll be better off as a public servant and for the people when your program is working. So that's still an issue in Mexico.
Okay, thank you. And we have very little time left, but I cannot not go to our other two speakers. Please, if you can come with one-word answers to this, it would be lovely. And my question is for Adriano and for Engbold. Please, as an auditor, when you look at evaluators, what is one thing that you would like to gain or learn from the evaluators?
Something that Dennis just brought up that really resonated. We don't need to combine them in a sense of having one superpower thing. I mean, I think we have different roles. I think this discussion is a very good, brought very interesting topics. And for me, I mean, learning more about the evaluation systems, the evaluation community, different perspectives, different institutions, organization setups, and especially the objective. I mean, you evaluate, and then what do you do with the results? Because from the SAI perspective is a very, at least for me, I mean, I've been working with that for 15 years now. I know, I mean, exactly what Dennis said. I mean, I have the evidence, I do the report, what do I do with that? But then what I think that, I mean, if I wanted to put it one word, would be stakeholder or stakeholder engagement. So this
Wonderful.
exchange of idea, perspectives, and for us as well, I mean, something that we have been working on for facilitating audit impact is a lot of stakeholder coalition, and actually to make these external actors better understand what we do and how to use the information that we produce. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriano. And exactly the same question, I'd go to Engbold. And I'm going to just say it here. Please go ahead.
For me, of course, evaluation monitoring and each audit type is different methodology and perception is different. But key principles are similar, must be similar. The final outcome should be reported, measured only whether an effect has occurred. The root cause of the failure to implement project measures should be determined. The structure should be interconnected. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you all panelists. Thank you, Dr. De Silva. I'm going to invite Chimji Ulsisuren to give the closing remarks. Oh, and we have a group picture, so we can pose for that very quickly.
Ahmed, over to you. Everyone turn on your camera, please.
Everyone, please open your camera. Okay, we have two pages, and this is page 1. Open your camera. Okay, and page 2. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ahmed. Chimji. Hi.
Okay, well, thanks very much for all our esteemed panelists and organizers for this webinar, especially for Center for Evaluation University of Shri J. Wardena Evad SDG, Mongolian Evaluation Association, Stiva, Sri Lanka Evaluation Association, APC Hub. And also I'd like to give special thanks to Dennis for putting together wonderful concept note for this very fantastic topic, and also our very skillful moderator and Indita. And I hope this webinar demystifies some of our big question mark on what's the difference and complementary roles of evaluation and audit. And for me, it was very wonderful to hear the different views of both sides and really talking openly about common venues and separate paths, but pointing together towards the achieving SDG with their own distinct roles and contributions. And especially Mr. Adriano's points on providing overall mandate of supreme audits, bringing shades and similarity to evaluation in especially the performance audits with 3 E's, economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. And also Mr. Dennis on how supreme audit can strengthen national evaluation capability by auditing both the demand and supply sides of evaluation and coordinated agendas around SDG priorities and systemic risks. So Mr. Gandolo, his lived experience and what are the complementary and contrasting of audit and evaluation in day-to-day life. And Mr. Inkbold bringing his own very enlightening on-the-ground experience from Mongolia with detailed recommendations on how evaluation should serve better for development in his country, not only pointing challenges, but also with the tangible solutions. And last but not least, Dr. Salma's her very inspiring reflection based on her long-standing evaluation services, bringing overarching big ideas on how these two professions can serve better together. And for me, I really liked Dennis' point that he mentioned he never wrote an evaluation report again in the same way since he learned the recommendations, how it brings very crisp and substantiated evidence to any findings they serve. And thank you very much and all the best to you all.
Thank you. This brings us to the close of a very unique webinar. If you want to see more of this topic, email us in APEA, let us know. We hope our panelists will come back. 2 very quick reminders. 1, there is a call for applications. There is a small grant available. Please have a look at it. The most important thing you need to know is the deadline is February 15, which is about 3 weeks away. So that's one. The second thing is meet us back here in about a month when we are talking about designing better evaluations using bricolage. So with those, thank you, right on time. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everybody here.
Thank you to you too, Anindita. Thank you for your good
My
work.
pleasure. My pleasure. You are all wonderful panelists, and we have to have you back. And we need to deepen this conversation and learn more from each other. Take care, everybody.
All the best.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone, and thank you for everything. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.